So I hired this team of cleaners, house cleaners, to come and clean my condo because I had a date with this girl. And it was the first time she was coming over for dinner and I was cooking dinner and I wanted to make a good impression, so I hired this team of cleaners. I think there was 3 of them, and they came in for 2 hours and they left. And as they were leaving, the main woman that was in charge kind of turned to me and in an oh by the way kind of way, she said, "You have mice." And I said, "Fuck, mice, what the hell?" And so that kind of horrified me, but the date was like in an hour, so I didn't mention the mice when she came over. But the next day I went to the hardware store or the grocery store or one of those CVS places, and I bought these mouse traps, not the like cartoon kind with the big spring and the back-breaking metal thing that flips over and kills them. But I bought the kind that are like this big tray with this sticky stuff in there, and the mice smell it and it smells like food, and then they get trapped and they can't leave, and you just throw them in the garbage. So I get home a couple nights later and I hear this thumping in my closet, and I go into the bedroom and I open the closet door, and back behind all my shoes there's this mouse, but only its hind legs were caught on that little trap thing. But that little trap thing had gotten wedged in between a couple of shoes which were piled up in a kind of unstable equilibrium, which meant that one little move, the shoes would come tumbling down and the mouse would escape. But because it was kind of far back into the closet, I didn't really want to reach back there with my hand because this mouse might turn into some fucking monster and bite me or something. So I went and I got the barbecue tongs. And as I reached in over the shoes, I accidentally knocked off this unstable equilibrium pile of shoes, and the mouse came running out right at me. And I had this friend who had this kind of creature living in his ceiling, or living in above his ceiling in that little space up in the, not the attic, but in a regular house that doesn't have an attic. They have the ceiling in the kind of crawl space up in the, where they keep all the insulation. But every night he would go to bed and he heard this kind of creature crawling around up there, and it sounded big, like bigger than a rat, or maybe a really big rat, some kind of a possum or something. And so he was afraid to look up in there, but he called a couple of like exterminators, and they were kind of expensive, and he was just barely able to pay his mortgage as it was. So he was kind of hoping the situation would just go away on its own. And one night he woke up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and he could feel pieces of the ceiling falling down on his face. And he thought, oh crap, I got to do something. And right when he reached over to turn the light on, when I was in college, I had this friend. He was among the guys I hung out with. He was like the smartest guy in our group, and he would always study, and he was going to become an attorney, and everyone was sure this guy was going to be some massive leader of society or something, because he was really smart, didn't smoke or drink a lot, and he only dated like wholesome girls, and he didn't go out on weekends and party like the rest of us did, until one weekend he took acid. We all talked him into taking acid with us. And the next 3 or 4 days later, after all of our collective trips kind of wore off and we got back to normal, we all went back to our regular classes, but he decided to ditch his plans to become a lawyer, and he wanted to become a ventriloquist instead. And so he got this ventriloquist dummy. And a few years later, after he graduated and starting doing all these shows and these little clubs, he had this neighbor that was like really, really loud and really, really nuisance. And so he told his ventriloquist dummy to go and kill him, and his ventriloquist dummy went and killed his neighbor. And at first he thought he had stumbled onto some witchcraft like in the movies, but then he realized this was a pretty good assassin, because he's made out of wood and he doesn't leave any fingerprints, and if there's some kind of camera, they would think it was some kind of a trick. So he just used this ventriloquist dummy to kill people that bothered him. And right when my friend reached over to grab the light to try to see what the fuck was coming down from the ceiling, this gigantic possum broke through, landed on his eyes, and started like clawing his eyeballs out and just right on his face. And my friend just freaked out, and he hit the lamp, knocked it over, caused an electrical fire, and the whole house burned down, and he died. And right when that mouse came running out of the closet, I fell on my back, I twisted my back, and I couldn't move. And I guess right where that mouse came out of, that was like the entrance to their home and in the wall where they were living. And for the next day I laid there on the ground because I couldn't move because my back was messed up. And these mouse kept coming in and out, and when they came in and out, they walked right over my face. God, it was horrible. That was like the worst day of my life. So I guess the moral of the story is, don't buy those sticky mouse traps because those things pretty much suck.